Charles, you know, that saying, may you live in interesting times. I think it's supposed to be an insult, but we're certainly doing it right now. How are you tonight, Charles?
Great to be on with you, Jason. I think we really are now in historic times. People, the supposed experts on the mainstream channels and the mainstream media, they have completely lost the plot. Before we get to the Supreme Court ruling and the excellent poster, and thanks to the art department for that, I just want to comment a little bit on the state of the disunion. Janine Pirro has some comments on Twitter that we should hope that the Democrats continue, just stay the course, keep doing exactly what you're doing. Mark Penn, who's very shrewd politically, and others, Elon Musk, I think, is shrewd generally, but is becoming very shrewd on American politics. It's customary for the incumbent party, where the president's the party of the president, normally in midterm elections loses seats. With the performance last night, I think there's a distinct possibility that Republicans will pick up quite a few seats and may even approach the magic level of 60 Senate seats, at which point it's really going to be the final 2 years of the Trump presidency where the major house cleaning occurs. That performance was first of all masterful by Trump. I mean, there are very few human beings, I think, who can get up in that kind of a setting and dominate the whole room. I mean, it was a masterclass, a master bitch slapping, and the Democrats fell into the trap. I mean, this what's this guy's name? Congressman, is it Al Green?
Wolfman Jack? Oh, yeah.
Wolfman, yeah, Al Green. Somebody points out that Al Green raped somebody on his staff in 2007 and we, the taxpayer, paid some payment to shush the lady up and the incident up. I mean, the collection of lunatic losers who could not bring themselves to stand up and cheer either the first lady, which I thought was disgraceful, or forget Trump. You can send stink eye to Trump, orange man bad, but to not stand up to paint yourself, as the Democrats like to do, as the party that represents the vulnerable, the party that represents women, the party that represents minorities, but you can't bring yourself to stand up and applaud the very moving cases that Trump introduced in the gallery. Not, of course, the superstar is
that
DJ,
kid.
The 13-year-old. And we don't yet know how he survived brain cancer. I'm going to guess, but maybe it's just good medicine, but it could possibly be because of treatments. What's that act that Trump got through?
The right to try. He looks like he's had some pretty dramatic surgery where he's got a big scar on his head.
Exactly. And in addition, he looks like his growth is off or something for a 13-year-old. But anyway, it was very moving.
But Charles, let me ask you something. When the kid, so Sean Curran came down and gave him a little like Secret Service agent badge or something, and the kid's face lit up like it was Christmas, and then he jumped and hugged Sean Curran, and you saw this smile. He closed his eyes, he got a smile on his face, and hugged him back. It was like the end of Bambi or something. I almost cried. It was unbelievable. You've never seen a Secret Service director, first of all, who anybody even knew their name, but to interact with the public like that, I think it was very smart.
Well, and if the animation department weren't on strike, I'm kidding, of course, we could contrast the reaction of that kid with the reaction of the many young ladies who got into the presence of Joe Biden and recoiled in horror as they were either kissed or groped
Sniffed.
or hair stroked. Right. Just do a nice juxtaposition of that.
Exactly. This was like the way the kid hugs the baseball coach, the most just innocent, oh, what a sweet, like, kind of fatherly. This is just a great moment between these two here. And the father is there smiling, proud in the background. This poor kid, And they wouldn't even stand up. They're such miserable, it's terrible, Charles, that they wouldn't stand up for that kid.
I agree. And another contrast is interesting. There's reporting, and I don't know if it's true, but there is reporting out there that Ukraine is talking now about drafting 14-year-olds. Now, I remember, because I had a friend, actually Bill Clinton and I shared a friend, Kurt Schork, who was a Rhodes Scholar in Bill Clinton's group, and he was dating a friend of Clarissa's. And I had him up to our home twice, actually, when he was working for some real estate family. But Kurt Schork was a remarkable guy. He's one of these really smart and off the charts smart, decent human beings who got taken in by some real estate family, had a nice job with them. And in the middle of, I think it was the Liberian African warlord issue, where the Liberian government was conscripting or actually forcing young kids into battle. This guy went out to Africa to report on it and try to make a difference and raise awareness of it. And a young kid soldier shot him dead point blank. And I remember that incident. It was horrible. And Bill Clinton actually gave his eulogy. I wasn't at the funeral, but he gave a very moving eulogy. He remembered Kurt Schork and all that. So explain to me how we are still, how any one of those miserable, excuse my language, it's a very technical term, fuckwads who, are leading the Democratic Party. Explain to me how we could even be entertaining the idea of providing military assistance to a government where the leader canceled elections, refuses to hold new elections, talks out of every side of his mouth. Before, I'm not going to negotiate, then I'll negotiate. Trump gets hopeful. Then this morning, no, I'm not negotiating with Russia. Jails his opposition, is taking people off the streets to put them into a meat grinder, has overtaken. There is no legitimate media inside, established media inside Ukraine. He's wound up a religion. I mean, this is a tyrant, and there are reports that he's got some offshore company, supposedly, I don't know if it's true, where there's a report that he just somehow managed to come up with $1.4 billion personally, or euros maybe.
What?
To buy some bank. Yeah, I mean, this is just ridiculous. You want to take, at this point, these various and sundry, if you're still supporting Ukraine now, then the presumption should be Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and others that you are a prime beneficiary of this money laundering operation. I mean, you should be. I mean, you're obviously in our country innocent till proven guilty. That's on the one hand, but on the other hand, the circumstantial evidence here is just screaming fraud, absolutely screaming fraud. How can you defend? It's like defending Satan to defend Zelensky at this point.
Yes, you were saying today doing that.
Defending Satan?
They're like, yeah, it's not that bad, Good parties.
Yeah, it's just and as various and sundry people are pointing out in the mainstream, that guy Scott Jennings on CNN, how he has the patience, but how he has the patience.
It's just so funny how he's yelling at Abby Phillips and her friends.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like, girls need to pipe down.
Yeah, and apparently also in another funny moment, is it Stephen Smith?
Oh, yeah.
ESPN guy. I think he went on The View, and he just tore Whoopi Goldberg to pieces.
Oh, really?
She was not. Yeah, she was expecting him to be anti-Trump, and he tore her to pieces. But so where we are, I think, is in the college classrooms, in the faculty lounges. They all are in the zone of the 20% minority in this country who is blissfully living in wacko land, hoping to get a tenured position where they don't have to do anything, hoping to get involved with some fake charity where they could just steal money. Those people love these antics. But the polls are coming out now. One shows 76% of the people who were sampled when watched that thing last night approved of Trump's performance. So by all means, if you want to stay down there in the 20%, craft the Democratic platform to appease the 20%. dime store Obama, penny store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, that idiot Pocahontas. And I love the fact that Trump called her out, because the real issue with her,
to her face,
well, in front of a global audience. I mean, the real issue with her and the shamelessness of that bitch. I would use another word, but I don't want to. I seldom use that word. To appropriate Native American ancestry, it was really a conscious thing. I mean, most people were not focused on the time the way I was, because this is in the late 80s. I was just about 10 years out of Harvard Business School. I remembered what it was like to be at Harvard from 78 to 80. And yes, there was a white man problem at the Harvard Law School. The Harvard Law School was almost exclusively white men as professors. And so there was an agitation to try to make it more representative of the demography of the country. And they also, unfortunately, got involved with this ridiculous critical legal studies, which was a precursor to DEI. And so Harvard was desperately trying to find minorities to put on the full as tenured professors on the faculty. It was in that climate that Elizabeth Warren put herself, left her wigwam with fake Indian headdress, and served herself up as a Native American to get on the faculty. That one act, going from some mediocre law school faculty somewhere in I'm not sure exactly where in America, but in the Midwest somewhere, or maybe in the South, to go leap into a tenured law professor position at Harvard as a Native American, that was outrageous. At every step since then, she's accumulated wealth and power. Who knows how she has all this money, but she's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. I mean, what they should do with her is send her out into the wilderness to die alone. I mean, she is really, which is what the Native Americans did as the worst punishment. The tribe would say you're ejected and you're on your own. We're not going to take care of you. No food, no nothing. Go die under a tree somewhere. Let the wolves eat you.
You know what's funny, Charles? Look, all these mainstream news things are having to address it now because Trump said it on that worldwide televised event. But at first I was like, what do they mean bring it back? He's been calling her Pocahontas forever. But I think that's only in news sources that, we, Crowdsource the Truth viewers, and you and I and people who we are paying attention to are talking about. They now are saying that he's bringing it back because they're like, oh, he got her again.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people like this. And then, the other thing that's coming out, there's so much news coming out that's tough to prioritize. But this idea that government workers have, on average, 2 credit cards, almost 2 credit cards each, with credit limits of $10,000 per card. I mean, what the hell is that all about, right? And I mean, it really is here. I mean, if you've ever been around, and you ran your own company, but if you've ever been around a bigger company with tight, excellent controls, this is so far away from being reasonable.
I don't think anybody could spend more than $1,000 at 21st Century 3D without me finding out.
In advance, right?
In other words, the credit card wouldn't even do it. It was for them to buy lunch and stuff like that when we were doing, It's not go out and buy whatever you want. It's not that kind of thing.
Right. And what I think might be coming next, this Howard Lutnick, and I share concerns about his background, but he seems to be pretty creative so far. We'll see what happens. He's talking, and Trump is talking, suggesting and teasing that maybe we'll eliminate the income tax.
I like it.
It could be quite interesting. But what would be fascinating would be if we also eliminated the corporate income tax. And why do I say that would be interesting? First of all, the corporate income tax doesn't collect that much in the way of revenue. I was in a debate at lunch I used to go to with some progressive moron who I said, well, how much do we take in corporate income taxes? I think he said $2 trillion.
Who said that?
And I said, the moron in this lunch, some lefty hedge fund guy. And I said, you're off by $1.8 trillion. It was back then around 200 billion. Now, 200 billion in the scheme of things is not that much money. We see what happens when the investment climate changes. Now, Taiwan Semiconductor for 500 and Apple for 500 billion of new investment. If we were to say to the world, you know what? We're sick of this bullshit. We're sick of you in the Cayman Islands. We're sick of you in Ireland. We're sick of you in these other tax shelter places. Effective June 30th, 2025, there will be no corporate income tax in the United States for the next 20 years. The amount of money that would rush into this country would make your head spin. Because the only reason Dubai exists, the only reason the Irish tax havens exist is because, we don't compete with them. But if we, with our under Trump and under a depoliticized FBI and Justice Department, when that comes to fruition, which is why I picked June 30th, I hope that's the date by then, it would be a genius move. Not just because I'm suggesting it, but it would be a fantastic move. And it would not be good for Dubai. It would not be good for Ireland. It would not be good for Switzerland. It would not be good for Bermuda and the Bahamas and all these other places. But it would be revolutionary for us. And then if states and cities followed suit and started competing to have the most attractive climate for long-term patient capital, I mean, there's no way that Europe could compete with that. None
Speaking
at
of
all.
states and cities, Charles, we got to talk about Eric Adams getting yelled at. That was pretty fun. I couldn't really go to DC today. I would have liked to have been there. But before we do that, what about Pam Bondi and all this crap with the Epstein files?
Yeah, let's just say she's not a great manager. I mean,
no.
She's not managing this process well. I mean, I would have thought, and going back to my background when I was doing leveraged buyouts and private equity purchases, the people who really did well in private equity, first of all, they paid good entry prices. You don't want to overpay. But more importantly, what you wanted to do, and we did this several times, you typically in any business purchase, it's not like walking into a grocery store and buying a carton of milk. I mean, it's complicated, and there's a timeline, a transition between when you agree to do something, when you sign the definitive purchase agreement, and when you close. Certain things need to happen. The genius private equity people get into the target company, not directing traffic, which you don't want to do, but understanding what's really going on, really before they agree to buy the company, when they're doing due diligence. And they stay in there before the closing, so that when you close, you hit the ground day one. But before day one, you've identified the most important issues that need to get addressed. You've got people tasked to do it. You got resources assigned to it. You've got milestones and checkpoints and all that kind of stuff. So on whatever date it was that Pam Bondi, or really before the time, before that time, Trump he says it himself, he's very superstitious. So he wins on the 5th. That day, there should have been somebody saying, okay, what are the key things we need to get done at the Justice Department, recognizing we don't have our person yet? What needs to get done? What did we promise the American people? What are we going to do about it? We promised, the Trump campaign certainly promised release of the Epstein files. And they've had a lot of time to consider what might be in there and a lot of time to think about how those files were going to get released. And Pam Bondi certainly flubbed, with that influencer stunt, and you just can't behave that way. Clearly she had not read the whole file. How do you believe that there are only 120 pages to the Epstein file? Right?
It just calls the whole competence of the operation into question. Like, do you even know what you're doing?
Right. And what is her real goal here? So she's got to redeem herself, and maybe she can, and maybe she can't. I mean, I would say that Zelensky definitely cannot redeem himself. I mean, it was a low point, frankly, for me, of the Trump speech was when he read out that letter from this turd, who Gutfeld just eviscerated that guy. But, Gutfeld called him a cat burglar. He was dressed as a cat burglar. But anyway, nobody should care what Zelensky has to say. He'll say anything, right? And we're certainly not going to get involved with Europe crush. And Macron wants to pacify Russia.
I mean, that's
Has
ridiculous. Macron's
Well,
an idiot.
has any other French person ever tried to do that? Napoleon?
Yeah.
Did it work out well for Napoleon?
Didn't Medvedev say something about that?
Right. It's that kind of stuff is very dangerous talk. If you're sitting there, I don't know Russian history as well as I should, but if you're sitting there with what I do know of Russia's history, where Europe has attacked Russia multiple times over the last centuries, multiple times, and now you have the Germans, okay, Germans saying overnight, we're going to spend close to $1 trillion on defense. Now, after World War II, I'm pretty certain when the Allies drafted the Constitution for Germany, I believe there was not going to be any military in Germany.
Yeah.
And so now we have a bunch of people without resolving just how many Nazis there may be worldwide, and not just in Germany or Europe or the United States, or elsewhere. Without resolving that, we seriously think it's a good idea to see Germany, we Americans, forget about Russia for a second, to see Germany say it's going to increase its military to this scale when they have no energy? Do they make steel in Germany anymore? I mean, how the hell are they going to do any of this? And why is this a good idea? And why do we want to be part of this? NATO is looking increasingly like an offensive alliance, not a defensive alliance. Why do we?
The other thing is, Putin's like, hey, no NATO in Ukraine. And they're like, oh, we're going to put NATO into Ukraine. So he's like, all right, war. And then as part of their peace settlement, they're like, well, what if we have European peacekeepers? It's like, how is that any different than NATO? No.
Right. These people are like interior decorators, right?
They won't give up.
Yeah, well, they find they glom onto some rich person, and every minute there's a new proposal to buy something stupid, where the interior decorator gets a fee, and says, oh yeah, this table over here, you should pay $20,000 for it. It's a good bargain. I found a bargain. Sometimes what these assholes do is they buy a table for $1,000 and say they paid $20,000, and then they take a fee. They take a fee of 35% or something on the $20,000 on top of it. I mean, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at.
I think you're describing a problem that most people don't have.
Well, I'm just saying. That's why I bring it up. Because I've experienced.
Listen, Charles, we're about 2 minutes away from heading over to the First Amendment Forum. We still have a lot of stuff we got to talk about because the SCOTUS issue. We've just basically tapped the surface, but Turley had some article out. I mean, it seems pretty bad. We're now at a place where, just some district court judge can do whatever the hell they want, and all the way up to the Supreme Court. They're going to uphold nonsense.
Well, this is a problem that was addressed in El Salvador by that man the leader of El Salvador has an Arabic name, Bukele, I think is his last name, Najib Bukele or something like that. And what he's done in El Salvador is amazing. He also put the spotlight on USAID in his own country, calling it out to be, basically opposing his country and being connected to communists in El Salvador. But he makes the point that you can't have a country if you've got people in judicial costume who believe that they could just do whatever they want. These activist judges. The same problem occurs in Brazil now, and we seem to have the problem in the United States of America. It's because we have bad law schools, and we have the precedent set by social justice warriors like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton. We got to change all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just lawfare criminals as far as I'm concerned. I hope we will be able to change it. I'm noticing some itchy impeachment fingers in Congress, which is at least a good start. Hopefully that will carry on. I want to invite everybody, Charles, to join us in the First Amendment Forum. You can still use your credit card through March. Odyssey is still working on their new payment system, so it still works as normal. People can sponsor the show for as little as $3 a month on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com. YouTube.com/crowdsource the truth. You know, Charles, these AI offices, they don't pay for themselves. So I want to thank everybody who's